What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the episode of The Lawyer You Know, and it has turned into a daily recap of this Abigail Zwerner trial because it is moving so quickly that they ended early today. They are calling no witnesses tomorrow on Halloween, and it looks like this trial might be over next Monday. So we might as well keep pace, talk about the witnesses that testified today. We had an expert talking about the damages and what this has done to Abigail Zwerner, and then Abigail Zwerner herself took the stand. And that is one of the most important parts of any personal injury trial. We are going to break all that down, answer all your questions. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Let's get to it. So we have a scenario here on day 3 where the plaintiffs are moving much quicker than expected, and the defense did not set up any of their expert witnesses to get here until Monday, which is totally reasonable. But they had 42 other witnesses and kept most of the witnesses on the witness or under subpoena, so they couldn't sit in the courtroom, and they were still subject to the rule of sequestration. And the plaintiffs are like, listen, judge, like, come on, they got to call a witness. The one that they did try to call later today, we will talk about. There's some great legal arguments made, and we can talk about some of those if you guys have questions about it. I personally really like the presentation of all of the plaintiffs' attorneys. And the defense attorneys, there's some I like better than others. There are some that kind of are grading towards me personally. But we'll see how you guys think about them. But one of the two very important witnesses that testify in basically every injury trial, because it is a civil case, not a criminal case. So the parties and the clients almost always take the stand. There's a Fifth Amendment right on the other side because there are active criminal charges against the defendant in this case. So they did not call her. If there were no active charges, then they would have called her in a case like this if it was just a pure negligence or a gross negligence case. But there are other things going on there. So today we hear from a forensic psychiatrist, I believe, not psychologist, but a forensic psychiatrist who is going to talk about the PTSD that the teacher suffered from the gunshot wound when a 6-year-old brought the firearm to school. And then is going to talk about current damages, what she's dealing with, and into the future. Because when you ask for damages in a case like this, it's past treatment, medical bills, past pain and suffering, and future treatment and medical bills, and future pain and suffering, and the loss of the ability to earn income, whether in the past or in the future, which he is also going to help with. How is she going to be able to perform her jobs? He was a great witness, in my opinion. I thought he came off really professional. He had a great resume. He's actually a lawyer as well, which is always interesting. And usually, if you're a lawyer who's a doctor, he's not a bad witness lawyer. He's more of the good witness lawyer. He's got just enough lawyer in him, to be a good witness. So from my perspective, I think he was a really good witness. He's double board certified, forensic psychologist. He gathered all of her records, and he met with her twice. So looking at all the records is really important. We're going to find out he actually didn't have all the records when the defense attorneys come up and actually do their job in this case and talk about there's actually some things you don't have. We'll talk about whether or not that's important. But he gathered the records and he met with her twice. And he is going to obviously talk about how important that is, as is any expert in any case that is the one that meets with the client or the party. Because if the other expert did not meet with the party, and if you're comparing experts and who are we going to believe and whose opinion is better, probably the one that met with the party. And that's why he sets it up that, yes, I had not one, but 2 meetings with Ms. Zwerner. I see a couple people saying the audio is ahead for them. If you restart the browser or refresh the browser and make sure you hit that like button, audio usually will match up then for you. Okay, so let's take a listen here to him explain now, what did he diagnose Abigail Zwerner, the teacher, with as a result of the trauma she suffered in this case, and how is she dealing with that? What are her symptoms? We're going to get into what this expert has to say.
Before the, what we'll call incident event.
Yes.
And why is that important?
Well, whenever conducting any psychiatric examination, you have to have a life course to understand where the person is today. And so to simply start off with where they are today is not sufficient. You have to start off way back to see what the source of the person's symptoms happens to be today. So the examination really begins with birth. The evaluation goes back, gathering all sorts of information about developmental history, whether or not there have been traumatic experiences in that person's life up to that point, whether or not that person has a family history that makes them more prone because of genetic predisposition for certain mental health disorders, whether or not that individual has other factors that may be influencing their behaviors and their symptoms. For example,
so he talks about how her past is important, right? And what she has gone through to get to this point and what her family life is like and how she had a great family, which is always important.
She was surrounded by a very positive family, loving family, supportive to her and her needs and encouraging her in terms of her career and focus. There are no issues around substance use disorders or other problematic childhood developmental disorders.
And that's always important as well. What happened to them when they were a child? Is that something that could add to what they're suffering from today? And of course, if there was anything in her past, the defense is going to use that and say she was already dealing with this. This did not happen because of the incident, right? And there is some of that, and they are going to talk about some of that. And he talks about some of that as well on direct. They try to get out ahead of some of the issues they know are coming on cross.
In terms of the records that I had available to me, was somewhere around 2018 where she started to, I believe it was 2016, 2016, when she started to express to her family physician that she was at least experiencing some depressive symptoms. At that time, not anything that raised anything major, but she at that time had a transition in life, and that was she was in college, a freshman, dealing with the stresses of being a college student.
So you deal with something the defense is going to bring out, that she had past depressive thoughts when she was going to college, but he explains why. And he explains how they resolve and how they were treated and how they were not happening to her at the time of this incident. And then this incident obviously kicks in. Now, in some cases, I think jurors are more apt to believe, oh, they already had these issues, they're just trying to blame it on this. This case, pretty traumatic event, I think, for anybody. So I think the jurors are going to have an easy time buying that she's suffering from PTSD as a result of this event. But, and again, people in the chat, when we have a couple thousand people watching this case together, I love to hear your opinion. Did the fact that she suffered from some depression at different points in life, they're also going to talk about when her father passed away, does that diminish the PTSD and anxiety and issues that she has now? And some of the testimony from her mom and sister that she's more reclusive now, she's put up a wall now. Those are the kinds of questions the jury has to ask themselves, is how much of this is a result of what happened at the school on January 6th?
At some point, though, later on in 2018, the stress of college started to become a little bit more difficult, and her family physician treated her for depressive symptoms and anxiety symptoms. Those symptoms being
even though the plaintiff brings all this out, the defense does a really good job of saying she was actually on medication. They had been dealing with this and treating her from this all the way since back then. So you can try to make it seem like a nothing burger, but the defense is really going to highlight it, which they're trying to diminish the damages that were caused here.
To the stress of her academic activities. And that was clear in the records. What was also clear in the records was that even though she was having those symptoms, she was able to continue to function and was functioning relatively well. She was pursuing her degree and completed that successfully.
And they're going to say, well, guess what? After this traumatic event, she pursued another degree and she was able to complete that successfully. And he's going to handle those questions, but you have to understand how the defense is going to compare this and be like, she's fine. That's what defense attorneys do in these cases. They're like, she's fine. It was traumatic. She had great doctors. She's fine now. The damages are not that extensive, is what they're going to try to argue.
She was social actively. She was actively social, had friends, did things, exercised regularly. And so she was overall doing well. And was being managed well with her family physician in terms of.
So at the time this happened, everything was going well. It was managed well. She was taking her medication. She was working out a lot. And then they're going to use some of that against him because she worked out after. She worked at the gym, all these things, right? It's tough as a defense attorney to take that hard line when there's such he's talks about how this is classic PTSD. An extremely traumatic event.
Her treatment. Unfortunately, she then had a traumatic experience, one that I think many of us could relate to, which was a loss of her father unexpectedly. in 2020. And of course, that was a traumatic experience for her and her family. And there was a period of grief and some difficulty around that grief. And fortunately, she was able to receive some grief counseling to get her through that period of time. She was also able to continue to start her work as a teacher shortly thereafter. As a matter of fact, if I'm remembering correctly, I want to say that her father passed away in, I want to say July of 2020, I believe, that summer at least. And then she was starting work in that fall. And she was able to do that despite her difficulties around losing her father. And the medical records were very good.
And this is always so like some defense teams. It's like blame somebody for trying, right? For trying to better themselves, for trying to get through things, whether it's in the past or in the future, for seeking mental health help when you need it, as opposed to never hoping it gets used against you in a situation like this. And this is part of the problem. It's like, you ever have one problem in your life, people act like you can never have another one. It's always going to go back to that first one. They're always going to blame somebody else or something else. And to me, it's like, to do it in a case like this is really brutal, but you can imagine what happens to people that are injured every single day because somebody else is doing something stupid or not paying attention or drinking and driving or texting and driving, running a red light because they're in a rush, whatever it may be. And it's like everything gets used against them. They feel like a criminal defendant. I can't tell you how many of my injury clients tell me they feel like a criminal defendant by the end of it. Like they did something wrong because they happened to be sitting in a red light at the time somebody else decided to do something stupid.
Been documenting her progress during that time, her treatment, and her eventual improvement around the stresses related to that. So those were the major events, including the stress of being a brand new teacher and starting career after college, those sort of things, until we come to January 6th of 2023. I should note, though, that despite some of the symptoms related to her depression and anxiety leading up to that point, and it was very clear in the medical records that she was doing well and had a lot of improvement leading up to January 6, 2023. The records show that she pretty much had mild, if any, symptoms and was doing well overall.
And in terms of the timeline, as you've laid out, the loss of her father, 2020, this event, January of 2023, is it, in your review, the records, did it appear that the grief was under control?
Yes.
And that she was operating and going out and returning to her normal self, if we call it that way?
Well, yes. I mean, even with the grief of her father closer to, his death, she was still involved in social activities. She was still involved in family activities. She was still very active, was not withdrawn, not isolative. She was not overwhelmed to the point where she was impaired in her normal functioning at that point.
And you can notice he's comparing prior to this traumatic event to now, right? And how different she is.
So I want to transition now and talk about how, if at all, in your findings, that changed as a result of January 6, 2023. So we mentioned the diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes.
And if we can just briefly explain to the jury so that it may help us frame it for them. The post-traumatic stress disorder is a condition that's explained in the DSM-5. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Could you tell us briefly what the DSM-5 is, what that means?
Sure. So the DSM-5 stands for...
Then they go through defining PTSD, how she has the classic version of it. And, they explain nightmares and how it affects when she goes to the movie. And she didn't realize that that the Hamilton movie was going to trigger her. And then it did. They talk about the connection between brain and body and how, you don't necessarily know how things are going to affect you, but they absolutely do. How some nightmares are specific about the look on the kid's face in the class. Some are more general, just kind of fear-based. They go through a lot of the losses and problems that she has suffered from as a result of this traumatic event. And then they get into, and again, this is the plaintiff trying to deal with the issues they know are coming from the defense side. How is it possible somebody like this could ever possibly have any fun or go to a concert? And I loved this expert's answer.
D, hyper arousal, where you become more hyper vigilant. You're feeling as if...
He's still explaining some of her feelings, but we'll get to the concert stuff here soon.
An individual near you might cause some harm. Why is this person looking different than the rest? Now you're keying in on one person in the crowd and watching that person instead of enjoying the concert. You're wondering whether or not this person is doing a little bit too much. Now I'm distracted thinking more about these negative things than enjoying whoever it is that I've come to see. And of course, depending on where a person is in treatment, that's a good thing. As a clinician, I want my patients to try. I want my patients to see if they can. I want them to try to get better, to see.
I missed it. Sorry, guys. It's so hard to keep the timestamps when it's live, but I'll back up a little bit. So we'll hear the concert question. That was the concert answer. I want my patients to try to do better. Don't just sit at home and do nothing.
Family. Are you saying that this means someone shouldn't go and shouldn't be able to go at all? Or is it just that when these alterations in mood and avoidance, if we heard that Ms. Zwerner went to a concert with family, are you saying that this means someone shouldn't go and shouldn't be able to go at all? Or is it just that when they go, something happens to them?
And that's what he explained. It's a completely different experience for her. It's not the same. She's noticing everything differently. She's not necessarily enjoying it as much, et cetera, et cetera. And wait till we hear more about that later. They talk about how all this affects so many aspects of her life: work, social life, happiness. It was clear the trauma that she suffered was at the school when all this happened. And then they talk about future issues. She has permanent, I liked his explanation. She has permanent physical scars that are a reminder of what happened to her. And every time she gets dressed or looks down or uses her hand, she is reminded of that traumatic event. Therefore, PTSD is chronic and permanent, and she's going to have to deal with this for the rest of her life. And proving a permanent injury and something you're going to have to deal with forever. We already know the injuries to her hand and the fragments are still left in her. Those are permanent physical injuries. Well, she also has permanent chronic PTSD she's going to be dealing with for the rest of her life. And when the lawyer explains in closing argument the damages in this case, which is one of the things we haven't really seen, is like, how are you going to get to the dollars? How are you going to get to the money that you're going to ask for it, which can feel cringy in the regular world when we talk about this. It can feel grifty, I think. I don't necessarily, I think I know the definition of grift, but it's grift, I think, has a negative connotation that you're like trying to get money for something that you shouldn't get money for it. I don't know. But, it feels like that when you ask for money, but that's not it. That's not what we're doing here. This is, she has been harmed. She has suffered losses, and we cannot go back in time and take that away. Number one. And number two, we don't live in a barbaric society where I now get to do that to the 6-year-old or to Dr. Parker or to the 6-year-old's mom or anybody that I think is at fault for this. I don't get to go do that to them, an eye for an eye. It's money in the civil justice system. That's all we can do. And that is how we should want it in America, in a civilized society. So we have to talk about money. Let's talk about it. It can be hard, but that is what you have to do in cases like this. And that's what an expert like this sets up. So on cross, they talk about, I thought they made some, as good of an expert as he was, I do think the defense made some decent points on cross. The decent points they made were, there were some mental health records that you did not review. And they asked him some questions about that. And I will tell you, he said, I didn't need to review them. It wasn't necessary. They also asked about, did you interview this person or that person, anything like that? And he said, no, it wasn't necessary. To me, no big deal. I don't really care. But I have talked to a lot of jurors who say, if the experts don't have all the records, I don't believe anything they say. Or whichever expert actually looked at more records, I tend to give them more credibility. So if the defense expert has looked at the records that this expert hasn't, I think it's possible somebody on the jury is like, oh, that expert is more reliable than this one because they've looked at everything. Now, trying to convince the jury of what's important and necessary and what's not, that's expert by expert. They talk about how she had mental health issues in the past. There are some jurors that may be like, oh, well, she's always dealt with this. That's a common argument defendants make. Okay, so those were the good arguments. And then some of the bad arguments they made. Well, the only thing you ever know anything about is self-reports, is what Abigail Zwerner, the plaintiff, is telling you. It's like, no, I looked at the medical records. Well, even medical records are just her self-reports, and she could be lying or exaggerating. It's like, okay, so for her entire life, every time she goes to the doctor, she's exaggerating or lying, knowing one day it could come up in court, and therefore we can't trust any of her self-reports, just in case anybody ever tries to use that against you. Every single one of us has doctors who rely on our self-reports. If we lie to doctors or lawyers, it can hurt us significantly. We usually don't lie to doctors. Sometimes we lie to lawyers. Hopefully you don't. But when you have that scenario going, you can call anybody a liar anytime you want. And anytime somebody tells you how they're feeling or what they went through, of course, it's a self-report. And guess what? Self-reports are reliable. That's why we use them in court as witness testimony. I can't report for someone else, but I can report for myself. So I didn't think that was a very good argument by them. And then when they're like, well, so she said she wasn't doing recreational drugs. Did you look at her text messages at the time? And I was like, oh, that's no big deal. But maybe it is. Maybe it is later. Did you know about the GoFundMe? No, I didn't know about the GoFundMe. Again, I thought that was kind of a nothing burger. All right. Then we get to Abigail Zwerner herself, the plaintiff in the case, potentially the most important witness, because a jury is usually going to try to determine who do they believe, and they're not going to hear from the defendant. And when you're asking for a lot of money, they're usually sizing up that plaintiff. Do they deserve this money? Were they really hurt? Was their life really affected? Are they just money hungry and trying to turn this into a lottery ticket? And I don't blame them, right? That's just kind of how normal people feel sometimes when somebody takes the stand. But I think this case, so you talk about the most common time to call your client in a civil case is either first or last. Okay. Sometimes lawyers have the strategy of save a couple good witnesses after, just in case maybe they don't do a great job, whatever it is. But first and last are the most common times to call your client in a civil case. She was last, and I think they had built up such a good case, and I think the jury had so much sympathy for her and understood what she went through as brutal, that I think they're going to give her more of a benefit of the doubt than they usually do with most plaintiffs. So I thought it was smart to call her last, even after this expert testified about what she's going through, because if she seems nervous or starts crying on the stand, he's kind of explaining what she's going through. And if the defense comes off as jerks, they'll be like, whoa, she's got PTSD, guys, take it easy. So I do think that's, potentially one of the reasons they decided to call her last. Okay, so let's get to her testimony. It was very quick, very short, much, much shorter than I thought. And if it's true that they're asking for $40 million, I think it's going to be difficult unless they really hate this assistant principal or hate the school system and think they totally failed this student or this teacher and how, this is all just so horrible and traumatic and we need to punish everybody. I don't see how they get to $40 million. I have not seen, usually I like a life care plan. Like she's going to need to see a mental health counselor once a week for the rest of her life. She's going to need 2 more surgeries on her hand and then follow-up care on the bullet fragments in her hand. That's going to cost $7 million the rest of her life because she's young and she's going to live 50 more years, whatever it is. I like some hard numbers like that to start with. So in the past, she had $500,000 in medical bills. In the future, she's got $10 million in medical bills, pain and suffering. In the past, $5 million. In the future, $20 million, whatever. Explain it to me how we get the $40 million. And usually, I got to feel it from a plaintiff. And I tell my clients that too. It's like, usually juries give you what your case is worth. If they don't feel like it's affected your life that much, if they feel like it's an inconvenience, they'll give you something because it's not fair this happened to you. But if it hasn't changed your life, they're not going to give you pain and suffering money in big amounts. And usually, the first conversation I usually have with clients is, let's hope this is a small claim. Let's hope this is quick and easy and not a lot of money is exchanged hands. Because then that means it didn't affect your life that much. And that's what we all want after a car accident or truck accident or whatever it is. Because the really big cases, the really expensive cases, the big verdicts and the big settlements that we have, I say, you don't want that to be you. Because those clients deserve that. You don't want to deserve $40 million, I promise you. And I think they can get there in this case. I think they can. But I don't know that they've presented enough. And she was on the stand for such a short period of time. I'm not really sure that they've proved it up quite that much. But I thought she came across great, likable, credible on the stand, not overdoing anything, nervous/anxious, only a teacher for 2.5 years. She started in 4th grade, then moved down to 1st grade. They got to January 6th, what she went through, how Kovac told her about JT. Kovac said she was going to go tell Parker. Kovac went and told Parker. She trusted Kovac because Kovac had all this experience. But the defense does point out some things that a jury may hold against her. But let's kind of hear her description and discussion about the damages here. Can the jury ask questions? I'm not sure in Virginia. I would think the answer is yes, but I'm not sure. Okay. So let's go here and listen to her explanation of how this has kind of affected her entire life.
A large memory that I have, I do remember it was like a very blank look, but it wasn't a blank look at all on his face.
And
Yes. Yep.
at the school.
All right, timestamp might be a little off. I'm going to skip ahead a little.
To heaven or in heaven. I thought I had died. I thought I was either on my way to heaven or in heaven, but then it all got black, and so I then thought I wasn't going there, and then my next memory is I see two coworkers around me, and I process that I'm hurt, and they're
So this is her recounting exactly what happened and how she felt. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that with my screen. And how she felt right after it happened, right? And then they're going to get into how it affected her life as well. But the jury's got to hear this. The jury's got to feel this. Dana said, Peter, who can possibly pay millions? That assistant principal can't pay millions. Where does the money come from? So this is a good question. And I see it coming in the chat a lot. I don't know the answer to this. I don't know what's happening in the background. Sometimes there's vicarious liability. Sometimes there's sovereign immunity issues that you've got to get this, and then you go argue to try to get something above the sovereign immunity cap. Sometimes there's insurance in place. Sometimes schools have insurance. And so I don't necessarily know that exactly where the money's coming from. I would hazard a guess that the assistant principal is not going to be the one paying it either. But there could be some other ability to collect in the background that I'm not privy to. And guess what? I don't mind that in this case because the jury wouldn't know that either. They haven't said it in the trial. So it's not something the jury should consider.
they're putting pressure on where I'm hurt.
And Abby, can you describe for the jury a little bit about how you're still feeling physically and emotionally? I know that's a big question.
And this is always another hard one that is difficult for a lot of lawyers to ask. It's like, how do you get your client to explain what they're going through and how they feel? You don't want to rush it. You don't want to make it seem overly prepared, but this is the crux, right? Explain to me how this has made you feel. I mean, how do you answer that question over the last 2 years after being shot at school, right? It's like a very difficult question to answer. I like to break it up and ask multiple different ways, right? Like, how has this affected your sleep? How has it affected your social life? How has it affected your relationships? How has it affected your ability to work? How has it affected your general happiness, right? I like to ask more questions to really try to pull it out of them, because it's not like they're lying or you have to coach them or tell them what to say. It's just, it's really hard to do. Like if I asked you about, whatever the saddest moment in your life 5 years ago, how it's affected you, if you haven't thought about that and kind of considered it and reflected on it, it's going to be really, really hard for you to answer that question.
Physically.
Can you describe how it is with your left hand still? The things you can and can't do, even to this day? So Abby, can you tell the jury when we have lunch together, are you able to open your potato chips, or do I open your potato chips for you?
I asked you, we had
By the way, this is even like a little bit sped up just minorly, and these long pregnant pauses continue to happen. Usually that's not an appropriate question to bring yourself into it as the lawyer, but no objection. So you can see how difficult this is for her.
we catered sandwiches in a box, and a small bag of chips and cookies were catered, and I was trying to open the bag of chips on my own multiple times, different ways, trying to hold it different ways, and I eventually asked you to open it. It's the same thing with water bottles. Overall, I would say I do struggle with things, doing things.
And for example,
That's not enough, right? I do struggle with doing things. Like, that's not enough. But her emotion, her facial expressions, how she's dealing with it, the jury's starting to get a feel. And again, the lawyer does have some follow-up questions.
heard from your sister yesterday, and she described a change in your relationship with not only her but friends. Are you able to explain a little bit to the jury about how you feel maybe those relationships have been changed?
The best I can explain it, it's like I still feel connected and close, but it's also that feeling of distance, a little numbness, and it's like I know I trust the person I'm with, you know, I love them, I know them, but there's something that's just different. I can't necessarily put it into words.
And what about, we heard from your mother about the movie Hamilton. You were planning to go to it that day. What happened that changed your mind when you had already purchased the tickets and made those plans?
It was a Saturday. I remember waking up. I woke up and I remembered that there was a scene where two characters had dueled with firearms, and when we had started making the plans to see the movie, when the Saturday was coming up to see the movie, it just never flew through my mind. I had seen Hamilton before, but for some reason when I woke up that day to go see the movie, it just flew right into my head, and just an overwhelming sense of, I felt like everything just came over my body. And I remember I called my mom. I don't remember if I was crying on the phone to her. I don't remember if it was afterwards, but I remember crying a lot. And I remember that afterwards, they were asking me what else would I want to do instead that day. So, okay, we can't go to the movies. What do you want to do instead? Where else would you want to go instead? And I remember saying or telling them nowhere. Like, I can't go anywhere. I just want to stay home. I'm not going anywhere today. I can't. And I remember that it was my mom and my sister. So it wasn't just my mom and I planning to go. It was my mom, my sister, and I, all three of us planning to go. And then they proposed to come over to my place, and even that still, I didn't want, no, just leave me alone. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to see anyone. I don't want to.
So you start to get the feel, right? The more you talk about it, the more you hear about it, you really do start to get the feel. And this is how they ended the direct, basically, is with this kind of line of questioning and her explaining how she feels and why she feels that way. Then we begin cross. And I didn't necessarily love the demeanor of the defense attorney, but I do think she picked some nits that some jurors might find compelling. Again, you guys can tell me whether or not you do. I hated how she started it. She's like, I have a few questions to make sure the jury has the full picture. Objection, Your Honor. That's inappropriate counsel testifying, but there was no objection, but I would have objected to that. How do you deal with students in trouble? They show her some text messages about how there was another time with a student Q where Ms. Zwerner felt unsafe and evacuated the classroom. And she's like, well, I never performed a full evacuation. They're like, well, you left early for lunch one day. And she was like, yes, I did. So again, trying to show that you've dealt with it in the past and you didn't deal with it appropriately here. Joanne said, Peter, anxiety and depression in each person is different. This girl, as I did, went through depression with her parents passing. Working on the school system is hard. But after this, wow. I also think, PTSD is different than feeling depressed because something sad happened in your life. That's different than a traumatic event happening like this to her. And I think the nurse did a pretty good job of that. What type of case is still open against Dr. Parker? So there's 8 criminal charges. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's the 8 shots fired, I believe, by the kid is what I read. Again, I tried to stay away from anything outside of this trial. I had seen stuff in the past, but I really want to just hear what the jury's going to hear and what would they decide and how much money would they give, if any. That's really what I want to try to put myself in the shoes of this jury. So I didn't want to know everything else. I know a lot of you guys have questions about extraneous things, and I'm trying to stay away from that for now. All right, let's jump to, okay, so I talked about it yesterday a little bit of how the judge just lets them argue objections in front of the jury, which is just crazy to me, especially when it's something that is irrelevant like this. Listen to this lawyer's argument and I don't blame the defense lawyer, right? They're making the argument if this is how the judge went, but all this happens in front of the jury, including the judge's decision. So let's take a listen.
And in this text, you told them that you were sorry for crying.
Your Honor, I'm objecting at this point. There was pretrial rulings about prior acts, Procedure Rule 404, Your Honor. This isn't relevant as well. If you can look at the text that's on the screen before Your Honor, we would be objecting.
All right, so there are 2 separate texts, so let's just start with the top one. All right, how is that relevant?
It's relevant to credibility of the witness in terms of statements about, the jury's heard evidence that Dr. Parker didn't look at her, so this is probative of that evidence that's in court from this plaintiff's own mouth.
From December 15th of 2022?
A couple weeks before the shooting.
No, I'm going to sustain that objection.
Yeah, because it's totally irrelevant based on the timing, yet the jury just heard this lawyer say there's text messages that impeach the credibility of this witness. It's wild. It's wild. Now, if the jury has the proper understanding that they can't consider that, okay, fine, but why do this in front of them? Why not just walk up to sidebar and whisper this? Oh, no. My mouse just died. Let's see if I can do this. There we go.
All right, and then you have a separate argument on the bottom one? Or is it, I'm sorry, let's start with the objection first. Is that irrelevance as well? Or have you even gotten to that second one?
I had not gotten to
Okay.
the section.
Okay, so on the top one, I'm going to sustain the objection. All right, are you going to go to the bottom one, or did you just want the top one?
I want the bottom one.
Okay, all right, let me see that. Same objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is it the same date? I couldn't see the date.
It's the same date, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Again, it's about a completely separate incident.
Your Honor, the jury's heard testimony from Ms. Kovac and others about Dr. Parker not looking at her on January 6th, and Ms. Kovac made comments about Dr. Parker not doing certain things. This is a text message from Ms. Zwerner discussing feedback from Dr. Parker.
And again, she starts to say what's in the text message that Dr. Parker gives her feedback. So because Dr. Parker gave her feedback and looked at her on another day, they want the jury to infer that she looked at her and helped her on this day. That's what they're trying to do here.
It's directly relevant.
To what?
Credibility of the witness. It's probative of actions taken on the day of, which they've been able to place in evidence.
No, I'm going to sustain the objection. It's not relevant. It's on December the 15th.
It's like what happened on December 15th does not, in fact, prove what happened on January 6th. Come on. But the jury got to hear all of that, which is just mind-blowing to me. Then they talk about how there was a day JT slammed her phone and he got in trouble for that. And I think she sent him out of class or something. And JT came in, apologized. I think it might have been the day before January 6th. The mom apologized. They offered to pay for her screen protector. And then the defense was like, but you didn't send him out this day when you knew that these issues were happening. They talked about how they start to get into the things that she did not do, that Mrs. Zwerner did not do. She did not tell Ms. Parker or Dr. Parker herself. She did not send JT out of the room. She didn't search the backpack. She didn't search his person. She didn't do all this stuff. And it's important. And she didn't evacuate the classroom like she had done in the past, picking those nits. If a juror finds that she is more than 1% liable, potentially in Virginia, the way they have it set up is she could be completely barred from collecting anything. So did she fail to exercise reasonable care? And did she breach her own duty? Did she breach her own duty there? I thought that was interesting. She said, I trusted Parker to do the right thing. I trusted Kovacs to talk to Parker. Kovacs told me she was talking to Parker. I got a lot of help from Kovacs, things like that. I'm going to have to jump ahead here with my arrows to get to, if it lets me. Maybe it won't. All right, let's see if the mouse is charged up. Oh, no, there we go. Got to get to 319, and then we're going to listen to another clip here. We're almost there. All right, here we go.
Your Honor, may we publish it to the jury since it's already in evidence?
But this is your version, right? Your copy of it.
It says discipline is the
So now they're going to go through again more of her duties. And did she breach her own duty?
initial responsibility of the teacher. Is that correct?
Yes,
You agree with that?
Discipline is the initial responsibility of the teacher.
it says that.
And let's look at the next page. The boxed behaviors. You spoke about that with the jury a while ago. Ms. Werner, student behaviors on the left is possession of a weapon. Do you see that?
Yes,
And the next steps are secure students and ensure safety. Did you do that when you got a report that JT might have a weapon?
I did not.
And the next step is to immediately
So they are using their own arguments against them, basically. Let's take a look at this handbook. Did you do everything that teachers are supposed to do in this handbook? And if the answer is no,
notice.
that's negligence on your part. Now they're kind of admitting negligence on Dr. Parker's part and try to use it as a sword and a shield, but these are the arguments they're trying to make.
Immediate notice to administrator. Did you yourself notify an administrator?
Amy Kovac did.
I'm
I
asking.
did not myself.
Did not yourself. Damages from your treating doctors the last couple days. You eventually resigned from the Newport News Public Schools, is that correct? And you worked for a few months at a gym, Burn Boot Camp, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you and your sister Hannah also worked out there pretty frequently, is that right?
Beforehand, yes.
Before,
January 6th.
you would disagree you were still working out at Burn Boot Camp after?
Oh, I did go work out afterwards when I had started working there at the front desk in the fall of 2023. My doctor had cleared me to do light work, light exercises. So I tried my best to work out the best that I could with the weights, best I could.
And the jury has heard testimony about your emotional damages, correct? We heard from Dr. Watson today.
Yes,
You started seeing your therapist at Abundant Life regarding emotional problems back in March 2021. Is that correct?
that sounds right.
So again, going to use that against her. March of 2021, you started seeing your therapist. And those are the records that your expert did not have. That's what the defense attorney is highlighting here.
That was about a year and a half prior to January 6th.
Yes,
And you've been taking an antidepressant daily since 2021.
yes,
Again, trying to use that against her as if it's the same thing and as if she didn't suffer a traumatic event, which I think is a bit of a reach in this case, but very common defense tactic, what you're seeing here.
And you told your therapist that you've been diagnosed with depression and anxiety for a number of years. Is that correct?
yes,
You've been treated for generalized anxiety disorder
yes,
and a major depressive disorder.
yes,
And Ms. Werner, you felt a lot of stress and burnout from being a teacher. Is that right?
yes,
And you had also tragically lost your father in June of 2020.
yes,
And you had worked with Ms. Gonsalves on recovering from PTSD symptoms related to that event, because that's an event you witnessed. Is that correct?
yes,
Three.
All right, I know you all have.
Okay, so here we go. So now they start talking about the Taylor Swift concert.
I've read it.
Hold on 1 second. All right, objection is, state your objection for the record, please.
Your Honor, her introduction of this text message is irrelevant.
Relevance is the objection. Your response?
Clearly, it's relevant, Your Honor. She said multiple witnesses parade in here and say that she has social anxiety and can.
Multiple witnesses parade in here. Again, this is in front of the jury. That's what's annoying about it to me. Multiple witnesses parade in here and say she has social anxiety, as if that's so hard to believe.
Not even leave her home. This was
She's like, yup.
produced by Ms. Zwerner. It's actually an Instagram post, and it's directly relevant to her ability to function in the community. Follow.
You can tell she wants to say something, but she's not, because it's not an Instagram post. Certain lawyers of a certain age or a certain generation, I should say, or maybe some lawyers just don't like social media, might not know the difference between an Instagram post, and she's going to explain how it's a DM.
This incident, which she's placed at issue here.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection. We can also issue a limiting instruction if necessary that it only goes towards the testimony to contradict the symptoms.
And again, he says all this in front of the jury. I just, honestly, I don't get that. But, so they're about to go through this. And I have a question for you guys, because this is kind of like my chance to have a focus group on this. Tell me what you think about the next couple things we're going to hear on cross about what she did after some of these concerts. Okay.
All right.
Ms. Zwerner, is this an Instagram post you made on September 13, 2023?
It's a private message I sent to Taylor Swift.
Hi, Taylor. My name is Abby Zwerner from Virginia. I was the teacher who was shot by the 6-year-old student in Newport in January of 23. I've been off social media, but wanted to come on here and message you. My sister Hannah surprised me with tickets to your Eras tour in Philly. We've seen your Speak Now tour as well as 1989. We have been listening and raving about you since your Tim McGraw song when we were in middle school. And since then, I've looked up to you so much through experiences in our lives. Music to me is an escape. And you do that for me. Thank you very much for what you do and create. It reaches others in places that need to be reached. If by chance you see this, please refrain from posting to the public. I'm not sure if you share others. I am trying my best to keep my personal life out of media as I'm going through a challenging long court case. I would love to hopefully see you again in the future. I love you. What does this make you think? How does this make you feel? How does this make you feel? Does it make you feel? Because I think what the defense wants is for you to be like, oh, look, she's trying to use that she was a victim to say this about Taylor Swift. She's trying to hide this because she has a court case. I know how I feel. I know how it makes me feel, but I want to know how it makes you guys feel when you see this message. My mom was 15 when she had me and never was angry. Okay. Tracy said, wow, they're identical. As a fellow twin, forget minors. She's got a living, breathing, constant reminder walking around. Forget mirrors, excuse me. Forget mirrors. Susan C., thank you for gifting 5 Lawyer You Know memberships. All right, I've got some comments in here now. PTSD is not a reason to award her money. Again, you have to devoid yourself in emotion. There are jurors that believe this. I will just tell you, there are people in the world that believe somebody else can do something horrible to you and ruin your life, and you can have PTSD for the rest of your life. And people are like, so what's money going to do about it? That exists. And again, if we don't have the civil justice system, what do you think happens? What do you think happens if there's no civil recourse? Do you think people that this happens to just go and sit at home and never want any repercussion or vengeance for somebody that did this to them? The alternative is much, much worse. I will tell you, much, much worse. So some people say she was grifting for a meet and greet. Okay. No biggie. She's writing Tay-Tay. She wants attention. I'm mixed, maybe attention seeking. So this is why the defense is putting it out there. It gave me the ick. I appreciate the honesty. Music helps heal. So there's a lot of positive and negative. Clout chaser, people are saying. And listen, I appreciate the honesty because it is possible that there are people on the jury that feel the same way. It is absolutely possible. Okay, let's keep listening.
To admit it into evidence and publish to the jury.
Over plaintiff's objections noted.
Would you like me to read it out loud?
No, is it posted on that? I can't see it.
It's posted.
Oh, okay.
They'll read it.
We'll let the jury. Have you had a chance to read it, Ms. Zwerner?
Yes.
Ms. Zwerner, you just told the jury this is a Instagram post?
It's a private message to Taylor Swift.
Private message to Taylor Swift. And you gave that message on, or sent that message on September 13, 2023. And you let Ms. Swift know that you were the teacher from Rich Neck Elementary School who had been shot,
Yes.
and that you had been to the Eras Tour in Philadelphia. And that was in May 2023, correct? That you went to the Eras Tour concert in Philadelphia?
That seems around that time. Yes.
That was a few months after the tragic shooting, correct?
Around summertime of 2023, I remember.
It
Yes.
was a few months after you recovered from your physical injuries. Is that
4
correct?
months.
And you told Ms. Swift that you were involved in a long court case from the shooting and asked her not to post.
We don't need to hear them go through it
a
again.
series
All right,
of
we
social.
kind of get the gist of this. There was another one from another band that was similar. And so again, if you thought it was just Taylor Swift, and then there's an EDM band that she did something similar with. So once again, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel like she's a clout chaser, make you feel worse about her, things like that? So, and yeah, Priya said, so if we message you about how you have affected our lives, are we fishing for something rather than letting you know the effect you have on people? So I was going to try to stay out of this one, right? On how it makes me feel, because I know how lawyers are going to try to use this. And I'm in a weird position, right? As a lawyer who handles cases like this, sees and deals with both sides of seeing messages like this. But I'm also on the other side sometimes, where people write some of the most gripping and amazing messages that I ever read. Sometimes nicer than my clients are to me. Clients write me a lot of nice messages as well about how you affect their lives. And I'll tell you how it drives. Taylor Swift gets a bajillion of them, so she probably doesn't see half of them. I try to look at as many as I can. I love getting them. I absolutely love it. I don't consider it clout chasing. When people are going through tough times and they're like, it helps. I just got some today. It helped me recover from a surgery, and I'm stuck in bed and I'm bored and my mind stops working. And it's like, but then I get to listen and learn and get some enjoyment out of it. I love getting them, to me personally. So I have a different perspective than probably some jurors do. But from my perspective, I think there are jurors that will see this both ways. And if you're the defense, you want to get some jurors on your side that think, oh, she's trying to use this and just not like her. That's part of what the defense's strategy is, I think. We'll see. Okay, then it was definitely a little uncomfortable for me to listen to that. I was just kind of like, okay, then I thought these were some good text messages as well. They were like, they sent text messages from 2021 now. Oh, if I ever got out of teaching, maybe I would do cosmetology school. I don't know if I love teaching, but I would like doing cosmetology. I've always liked hair and makeup, things like that. So it's not that, I mean, they're trying to say it's not that big of a deal that you don't teach, you do cosmetology school. Some cases that might hit. In this one, it's just like, I don't know. That one doesn't really strike me the same personally. It's like, obviously she's not going to want to teach anymore after something like this happens. But then she made a good kind of joke where the jury laughed with her, where she was like, yeah, I also joked about stripping and I didn't do that. So it's like, what is really the truth? What can we really take from this? And then also I thought they did a good job of showing her what she had to sign off and do, that she was physically able to do the cosmetology stuff, which, and I'm sorry for saying cosmetology stuff, I don't know the correct verbiage when it comes to that. I believe it's hair and makeup. They showed her pictures of like haircuts that she gave, maybe coloring of the hair. All the hair seemed to be dyed. But that she was able to hand dexterity, things like that. And again, in a case where you're like, I hurt my hand, it hurts, and I can't use it anymore. I think that is very powerful cross-examination. When you see the diagrams you saw in this trial, and they were able to look at her hand up close and see the discoloration and the scars, and knowing that she has more surgeries coming up to remove plates and screws, it's like, I just don't know if that hits the same. I think you have to use it if you're the defense. They found the text messages, so they're going to try to use it against her, like, oh, she always wanted to be a cosmetologist and she didn't even care about being a teacher. I just don't think it hits the same personally from my perspective in this case, but you guys please let me know if you disagree. And then the defense also has this, and we didn't get any additional information about it, so I don't know how they knew it or how they were going to impeach her with this, but after what they asked the doctor, to get her to give this answer absolutely affects her credibility. Will it affect the way the jury looks at her?
Incident event, is that right?
Could you say that one more time?
Do you recall Dr. Watson, you were sitting here for his testimony, say, when considering someone's history, part of his evaluation was to try and determine whether somebody has had any experience in their life before what we call the incident event. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you
My
recall
timestamps aren't perfect again when it's live and we're doing this so close to the live, but the question's coming. I'll highlight it when it comes.
him saying that whether or not that individual has other factors that may be influencing their behavior and their symptoms, for example, is that person using substances? And you reported to Dr. Watson
Your
that
Honor, it's an incomplete
Here it is. The reporting about substance use, drug use.
statement of the transcript. It talked about addictive use of substances.
What are you reading from?
the transcript of Dr. Watson.
Okay, I just wanted, obviously I can't see what you're looking at. Did you read it exactly as it's?
Yes,
See.
for example, is that person using substances an addiction? Are those addictions actually more likely to be responsible for the symptoms?
All right, so your question is, did you hear him say that? Overruled any, withdraw the objection?
No, that's been read in full, yes.
All right, very good.
And Ms. Werner, when you reported to Dr. Watson, whether you were using substances prior to the event, you didn't report truthfully to that, did you?
No.
I think that's the best way that the client could have handled it, is just to say no and the lawyer moved on. But what does that make you think? What does that make you think of her credibility? Does that crush her credibility? Would that affect maybe not even the verdict, but the amount that you would give? Because the doctor did say that that would be important and that there was none because she self-reported. And when everything is based on self-report, I was like, oh, everything in your life is based on self-reporting. But if she's admitting that she's lying about some of that self-reporting, that could be important. That could be important. On redirect, they came back and I thought it was really good. I thought that was a really good way to end, by the way, good impeachment by the defense. On redirect, I thought they did a really good job coming back and being like, weren't you proud of being able to finish cosmetology school? And she's like, yes, very proud. I loved it. I was so happy I was able to do it, but it was really hard. I needed a lot of help. I did really good on the testing, but I needed help when it came to the performative stuff, whatever it is you have to do with your hands. She can't get a job because of all the surgery she still has coming up. So obviously, if you have another wrist or hand surgery, you're not going to be able to cut hair and do makeup or whatever. And so it's like she can't get a job. So it's definitely affecting her and going to affect her for long term in the future. I know, some jurors probably wouldn't give anything for that anyway. It's like big deal. A lot of us can't find jobs. There are literally jurors that think that way. By the way, if they're honest in jury selection and somebody said what that commenter said earlier, that they would never give money for PTSD, they would be struck as a juror for cause, because that's not following the law. She got a part-time job to feel human. And then that was the end of the testimony for the day today. They tried to bring in Officer Blythe to impeach Ms. Kovac with a video, and it was inappropriate because it was improper impeachment. They should have done it while Kovac was on the stand. Really good lawyer arguing. We're about at the hour mark, so I'm not going to go through it all, but there was really good legal arguments made at the end of the day today from both sides. Specifically, I thought the plaintiff made some amazing arguments and the judge ended up sustaining it. He said he'd give the defense another chance later to try and bring that information in. All right, I'm going to hit some questions here before we go. Abigail Bargetzi, thank you for covering. Super interesting case. Sorry if asked. Who decides on $40 million? The jury. Can they find her guilty and vote for less to be paid? So it's not a guilty or not guilty. It is a who's liable. And if they find that Dr. Parker is liable, and that the plaintiff in this case is not liable, even 1%, because if she's 1% liable in Virginia, you could potentially bar all claims. So if they find Dr. Parker to be liable, or as you said, guilty, but in the civil sense, the jury decides the dollars, not the judge. So the jury can say liable $1 million. They can say $50 million. They can say $40 million. The lawyers are still going to have to prove exactly what this case is worth. By the way, saw Nate on game day. Awesome. Saw Nate on Dude Perfect right after Tom Brady. Talk about an accomplishment. To be the next guest after Tom Brady, that's got to feel pretty good. She's really speaking from the heart, Joanne said, which is a great assessment if I'm her lawyer. That's what I want the jury to feel. She's trying to find something to cheer her up. Again, I think that's good for the plaintiff, obviously. If she was chasing clout or trying to get a meet and greet, why send it after the concert? It's a great point. Somebody thinking like how this works, right? It's like right after the concert, you're on a high, you love Taylor Swift, and you want to reach out. Nikki said, I'd find it sus as a juror, the cosmetology, since it's so much hand use, doesn't change that she was shot in the chest and will live with PTSD. I think that's fair, Nikki. I think it's fair. I think it's something the plaintiff has to deal with. And as we're seeing in the chat, a lot of people look at this in different ways. Catherine, does the jury have guidelines on determining money? Harm and losses, up to the lawyers to explain to them. It's up to the lawyers to really explain. And there's no like guideline like, well, one bullet equals this or one broken bone equals this. It's up to the lawyers to explain what is this worth? What is fair? And the juries have to decide. Now, there are parameters afterwards where judges can reduce it or there can be appeals based on it and things like that. Christy said, it's so weird. There are people who think being shot wouldn't scar them emotionally and then by a child. Yeah. Or they're like, money's not going to change it. Money's not going to take it back. I'm not going to give you any money. Yeah, this happened to you. I want money too. Bad stuff happens to me too. I've literally had people say that to me in jury selection. And I'm like, I agree. Bad stuff happens to all these people, but we're here for this case. And if we prove this person caused all of this to our client and they still don't care sometimes, it's hard. It's hard. All right, some Halloween things. Dana said, Peter, do we get a Captain Jack Sparrow redo tomorrow? You know we want. I'm definitely not dressing up and putting all that makeup on again. Maybe we'll be able to play the Jack Sparrow intro or outro. We'll see if we put on a costume. I don't know. I haven't talked to John yet about, we're doing like a blind candy tasting test. And John, I know, is going to put disgusting candy in there to mess with me because that's what he does. So we're doing that for the members only live tomorrow. For anybody that wants to join today, tomorrow, I think it's noon Eastern is going to be our members only live. So come hang out and check that out. Nurse of Interest said, happy Halloween Eve, Peter. What's your costume this year? I'll guess Batman, Save, Mass. I don't have a costume. Sometimes I'll like throw something together. I don't have one. I would do something with my kids. My daughter is doing like Alvin and the Chipmunks with her friends. I think she's being Theodore or Simon or Theodore. I can't remember which one. And then I don't know what Maverick's doing. Maverick will do something crazy probably by himself. I heard him talking about with his cousin being peanut butter and jelly, which would just be hilarious. He's kind of a clown, so that would be funny. I hope he does do that. Lawyer, off topic, but not sure if you saw the Kowalski case got overturned yesterday and there's going to be a new trial. Yes, I saw. All hope is not lost for the Kowalskis, although it's major issues. This is going to be our podcast topic this week. If enough people like this video and comment and subscribe to our channel, maybe we will drop it earlier than Monday, which is the plan, because it will be done prior to that, prior to Monday. So we will see. Yes, there will be a members only live tomorrow, John. Hope to see you there. All right. I think that's all we got for this video. I appreciate everybody that's following this trial. We will continue to do updates Monday if it's just the expert testimony for the defense and maybe a rebuttal case. If they do closings, we'll cover that too. If it goes to Tuesday, we'll be covering this trial probably the rest of the way. I think it's only going to be a day or two left of it. So you guys let me know what you think and let me know your thoughts as you're watching and what sticks out to you, what's important, what's not. From my perspective, I know what I think, but I really love to hear your guys' perspective as potential jurors, especially in civil cases like this. This is for Andrew. Shout out to law people. Shout to Andrew. Okay, that's all we got. Until next time, I'm out of here. Peace. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.